So we've prepared our concrete, it's ready to go. We've prepared our mould, we oiled it, we put it together, we put it in the tube. And the last thing we need to do is just to give a final check, make sure that everything is in place. We're ready to go, all the bolts are in place, nose plate is in place, tube's sealed, everything's in place, we're ready to start filling with concrete. Okay, so as we start to put the concrete in, we'll drop to the bottom, but we want to make sure that it's well compacted and it really fills the whole mould. So we've got two ways we can do that. One is to use a rod. So as the concrete goes in, we can push the rod down the sides and just help to tamp down the concrete as it's going in. The other method we use is to basically beat the sides of the mould with a rubber mallet, and that also helps to settle the concrete and to get the air bubbles out. So it's quite a noisy process. Essentially we're just going to be beating on the sides of the mould to help the concrete settle. And as we move up, we'll be beating higher and higher and higher, and we'll be tamping as we go. Okay. So the tamping, you're not trying to drive all the gravel to the bottom or really drive things out. You're just fairly gently helping the concrete to settle in the mould. It also gives you a sense of where it's filled and where it's not filled, so you can guide the next loads of concrete in. This also helps to release any air that might be trapped to the side. As each new sort of load of concrete goes in, we want to just push the rod through that new layer and just a little bit into the last layer, so we sort of mix them together. We're not always trying to reach the bottom of the mould. Be careful of is the plastic tube that's inside. We don't want to be hitting that too much with this mould. So we start towards the bottom and we work our way up, and then that also helps to drive out any air. Right now the concrete is about this level, and you see it starting to come out here at the joint with the nose plate, so we know that the nose is now filling up with concrete, so that's what we want to see. So we're almost at the top now. We've filled the concrete in layers, we've been rodding it at each fill, and then we've been beating the sides with the rubber mallet as well to help compact it. So now that we're at the top, we'll just be sort of forming this base piece. With the final bit of rodding, we'll do some beating again, and then we'll finish the surface. The rod that we've been using is just a piece of rebar. You could use wood if that's all you can find, but this is durable and will last a long time. So at this point we don't mind too much about the finish, we just want to make sure that it's really compacted, because we will come back after half an hour or so and we'll actually finish the compaction part. So we're just going to make sure it's filled to the corners, filled to all the edges, and we're going to leave a little bit extra in the middle. And the reason for that is that because of the nature of the mould, over the next 20 minutes, half an hour, the concrete will sink a little bit. So we want to make sure that we come back, and then we're going to make sure that we sort of rod it again and bind it all together to make sure that it's one solid piece of concrete. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do before we finish up for the day is we're going to rework the top of the concrete here in the mould, which will eventually, when we tip it over, will become the base. So what we found is that often there's a settling of the concrete inside the mould, and it happens in around this area. So what we've been recommending is to come back after about 40 minutes, 50 minutes, before the concrete is really starting to harden up and set, but then just come back and rework it at the top here. So in a way it's a bit like rodding. We're going to be chopping it up but driving the concrete down into the walls. So we just chop away. It helps to rebond everything together. Try and drive it into the walls, because what tends to happen is that the base block separates from the walls and we get cracks. So by driving it together again, if a cracking or separation has occurred, we can hope to seal that crack before it happens. Settles again, and then we're just going to press it down. We're going to drive it down into the sides, making sure the walls are well filled and well compacted. So we had a bit extra piled on top, but often we find that a lot of that actually blends back into the mould, so we end up with quite a flat bottom. And then make sure everything's driven into the sides and into the corners. And that's it. The last thing we might do is just to put a little bit of an angled edge. Makes it neater, makes it easier to move. And that's it.
Yeah, so at the end of the pour, after Pete came and reworked the top, one other thing that we advise is that you want to slow down the moisture from coming out of the concrete so that it doesn't crack. Just take some wet sand and put that wet sand on top as kind of a sacrificial layer that we'll take off today when we strip it, which will keep it from drying too fast.